If you're watching this right now, hit the like button, subscribe, and stay until the end. Because what I'm about to tell you is not some campfire ghost story or internet rumor. It happened to me, and it's haunted every single day of my life since. My name is Daniel, I'm 27, and 3 years ago I was taken by something not from this world. At the time, I didn't believe in aliens. I laughed at the idea of UFOs, mocked conspiracy theorists, and swore I'd never be one of those people claiming they had been abducted. But I can't laugh anymore. I wish I could erase that night from my memory, but I can't. It started when a group of us, me, my best friend Chris, his girlfriend Emily, and another buddy named Victor, decided to go camping out in the Nevada desert. Chris had this idea that we should drive far off the regular routes, away from campgrounds and towns, to find a spot where the stars looked like diamonds spilling across the sky. We wanted to drink, play music, tell stories, maybe record some videos for fun. It was supposed to be just a road trip, a night away from the noise of the city. We didn't know we were driving straight into something we couldn't escape. We parked the Jeep miles from the nearest paved road, set up 2 tents, and got a fire going. The night was beautiful, cold but not unbearable, and the stars were brighter than I'd ever seen them. Emily kept pointing out constellations while Victor set up his camera on a tripod, determined to capture a perfect time-lapse. Around midnight, after the drinks had warmed us up and the fire was crackling, I noticed something strange in the sky. At first, I thought it was a plane, just another set of blinking lights moving steadily. But then it stopped. Not slowed down, stopped completely, like it had slammed on invisible brakes in the middle of the air. I pointed it out to Chris, but he shrugged and said maybe it was a satellite. The problem was, satellites don't hover. And then, just as suddenly, it zipped across the sky in a straight line faster than anything I had ever seen, disappearing behind a ridge. We laughed nervously, trying to shake it off, but deep down, I felt my stomach twist. A few minutes later, the fire began to flicker strangely, not like normal wind or dying embers. It pulsed, dimming and brightening in a rhythm, almost like it was breathing. Emily whispered, "Do you hear that?" At first I thought she was drunk, but then I heard it too. A low hum, not coming from any direction, just vibrating through the ground, through our chests, like standing next to a giant engine. Victor grabbed his camera, swearing under his breath, and aimed it upward. That's when we saw it again. The same light, but now closer. Not high above the mountains, but low, drifting silently toward us. I remember thinking it looked wrong, like it wasn't really in the sky, but somehow closer than it should have been, like perspective itself was bending. Chris told us to get in the Jeep, his voice cracking. We ran, stumbling over the sand, shoving our gear aside. But when Chris turned the key in the ignition, nothing happened. The Jeep was dead, every electronic device in it useless. Victor cursed, slamming the dashboard, while Emily started crying softly. I kept staring through the windshield at the light, which had stopped directly over our camp. It wasn't just one anymore. There were 3 forming a triangle, spinning slowly. The hum grew louder, filling my skull. And then the world changed. It's hard to describe what happened next without sounding insane. The lights flared, and suddenly the fire, our tents, even the Jeep itself, seemed to stretch and warp like reflections on water. My vision blurred, and before I knew it, we weren't in the desert anymore. We were somewhere else. A massive space, white and endless, without walls or a ceiling, but filled with a dim glow. My friends were there too, standing frozen, their mouths open but no sound coming out. I tried to move, to scream, but my body wasn't listening. It felt like invisible hands held me upright. I wanted to shut my eyes but couldn't. Out of the silence, figures appeared. Tall, thin, impossibly tall, at least 8 feet, with limbs too long for their bodies. Their skin was smooth, grayish, almost translucent, and their heads seemed too big, their black eyes reflecting us like mirrors. They didn't speak, but I felt them inside my head, digging, pulling, tearing through memories. I saw flashes: my childhood bedroom, my first kiss, my father's funeral, every private corner of my life unraveling like film on fast forward. I tried to fight, but it was useless. One of them reached forward, and with a single touch, I was on my back, lying on a surface that looked like metal but felt alive, warm. Something cold pressed against my chest. Couldn't breathe, couldn't move. I could only stare up at their massive eyes, which seemed to swallow me whole. And then everything went black, like someone had flipped a switch inside my brain. I don't know how long I was unconscious, but when I opened my eyes, I was still on that same strange surface. Except now I wasn't alone. Chris was lying a few feet away, his arms locked to the table by nothing I could see, like invisible straps pinning him down. His chest was rising fast, his eyes darting around in terror. Emily was further away, motionless, and Victor, I wish I hadn't seen what they were doing to him. He was suspended in the air, his body tilted upright, with a web of glowing threads wrapped around his limbs. One of the tall beings stood in front of him, its long fingers hovering just above his skull. Victor's face was twisted, his jaw clenched as if he was screaming silently, but no sound came out. I could see his veins glowing faint blue under his skin, pulsing with the same rhythm as the humming noise that filled the chamber. I wanted to shout, to do something, but I couldn't move. My thoughts weren't safe. They were reading me, pulling at my mind like a book being flipped open without permission. I could feel them searching not just for memories, but for understanding, like they were dissecting what it meant to be human. I felt their cold curiosity as if it was my own. And then, as quickly as it began, they shifted their focus. One of them glided over to me, its body bending unnaturally, head tilting as it studied my face. Its eyes weren't just looking. They were inside me, splitting me apart. I thought I would die right there, or worse, lose myself completely. Instead, the creature raised its hand and placed 2 long fingers against my temple. Images exploded in my mind. Not my memories this time, but something else. I saw endless fields of stars, whole planets spinning like marbles, and structures that weren't natural, enormous rings and towers floating in space. I saw people, humans, but not on Earth. They were standing in glass-like cities under alien skies. Some were terrified, others calm, as if they belonged there. Then the visions shifted. I saw experiments, hundreds of humans laid out like we were, their bodies examined, their eyes wide with the same horror I felt. Some didn't move at all. My chest tightened, panic tearing at me, but I couldn't stop the flood of images. Finally, I saw something that froze me more than anything else. Earth itself, seen from above, blue and fragile. Around it hovered dozens of shapes. Ships, dark and silent, circling like predators waiting for the right moment. When the images stopped, I was gasping, drenched in sweat, my throat raw though I hadn't made a sound. The creature tilted its head again, as if satisfied with what it had shown me, then turned away. That was when I realized Chris was no longer on his table. He was standing upright, but his body wasn't his own. His eyes were open, but the expression behind them was gone, like something else was looking out through him. His lips moved, but the words weren't his. The voice that came out was deeper, metallic, vibrating with layers of sound. Observe, record, adapt. The others froze. Emily stirred weakly, finally waking, her eyes wide as she saw Chris standing there. "Chris?" she whispered, but it wasn't Chris anymore. The being inside him stepped forward, its gaze sweeping across us, and I could feel the pressure in my skull building again. Then suddenly the entire chamber shifted. The glowing walls rippled like water, and in an instant, I was no longer strapped down. I fell forward onto the floor, coughing, gasping for air. The hum was deafening now, like a swarm of insects inside my head. Victor collapsed onto the ground nearby, shaking violently. Emily crawled to me, clinging to my arm. We tried to reach Chris, but he just stood there, perfectly still, staring into nothing. Then, without warning, a beam of light shot down from above, engulfing him. He vanished, gone in a blink, like he had been erased from reality. Emily screamed. I tried to grab her, but the floor beneath us rippled again, and suddenly we were falling. Falling through nothing, air rushing past. Even though there was no wind, my stomach turned inside out, my vision fracturing like broken glass. When it cleared, we were back in the desert. The fire pit was cold, the Jeep still dead, the stars just as bright as before. But Chris wasn't there. Neither was Victor. Only Emily and I lay in the sand, shaking, our bodies bruised as if we had been dropped from the sky. Hours must have passed, maybe more, because the horizon was glowing with the first light of dawn. I wanted to believe it was a dream, that maybe we had hallucinated everything, but when I looked at Emily, I knew she had seen the same thing. Her face was pale, streaked with tears, her eyes hollow with shock. We didn't speak. We just sat there until the sun rose, and in the silence, I realized something horrifying. Our campsite was different. The tents were gone, the tripod was gone, and even the tire tracks from the Jeep were missing, as if we had never been there. We sat there in the sand, staring at the empty spot where our camp had been, like some giant hand had erased it from existence. Emily kept mumbling Chris's name, whispering like if she said it enough times, he'd just appear out of thin air. But he didn't. Victor was gone too. Just two of us left, trembling, unable to even comprehend what had happened. When I finally forced myself to check the Jeep again, the battery was working, the headlights flashed when I turned the key, and the engine sputtered back to life. It made no sense. Hours earlier, every electronic had been dead. Emily climbed in without a word, her arms wrapped tight around herself. I drove. I didn't know where, just away from that spot, away from the silence of the desert that felt heavier than stone. We didn't talk until the sun was fully up, casting heat across the sand. Emily's voice was broken when she finally asked, Do you think they're still alive?" I gripped the wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. I wanted to lie, to tell her Chris and Victor would come back, that it was just some weird blackout, but the words stuck in my throat. Because the truth was, I'd seen what they did to Victor, seen Chris turned into something else. They weren't coming back. Not the same anyway. We reached a gas station near the highway, stumbling inside like survivors of a plane crash. The cashier gave us a weird look. Dust all over us, clothes torn, eyes bloodshot, but didn't ask questions. I bought water with shaking hands, spilling half of it down my shirt as I drank. Emily went to the bathroom, and when she came back, she looked worse. She pulled me aside, whispering, "Daniel, I think they marked us." At first I didn't understand, but then she lifted her sleeve. On her arm was a faint, glowing pattern under her skin, like a circle of symbols that weren't burns or bruises. They looked alive, pulsing faintly in time with her heartbeat. My stomach dropped. I checked myself in the bathroom mirror, pulling off my shirt, and froze when I saw the same marks across my chest. Not identical, but close enough. Alien shapes, thin lines forming a design I couldn't recognize. I splashed water on them, scrubbed until my skin bled, but the marks stayed. We tried calling for help, but the strangest thing happened. Every phone we touched went dead. Payphones, the cashier's cell, even a couple travelers who stopped by. Their phones worked fine until we picked them up, then nothing but static. People started giving us nervous looks, whispering behind our backs. We left before things got worse. Driving back toward the city, I felt the hum again, faint at first, like an echo inside my skull. Emily pressed her palms against her ears, crying, saying it was getting louder. By the time we hit the outskirts, she was shaking uncontrollably. I pulled over, holding her as she begged me to make it stop. But there was nothing I could do. And then she froze, just froze. Her body stiffened in my arms, her eyes wide open. A beam of light, impossibly bright, cut down through the clouds above us, swallowing the car, swallowing her. I screamed and tried to pull her back, but she was weightless, rising out of my arms like a puppet pulled on strings. In seconds, she was gone. The light vanished, the hum stopped, and I was left alone on the side of the road, my heart hammering so hard I thought I'd pass out. No one believed me when I stumbled into the nearest police station. They thought I was drunk, maybe high, ranting about aliens and lights. I tried showing them the marks on my chest, but under their fluorescent lamps, the symbols had faded, barely visible. They wrote a report called my story delirium due to exhaustion and sent me on my way. Chris and Victor were reported missing, Emily too, but the official line was lost in the desert. Nobody wanted to hear what really happened. Days turned into weeks. I tried to go back to work, tried to sleep in my apartment, but the humming never fully left. Some nights it was faint, like a memory. Other nights it was deafening, rattling the windows, making the walls vibrate. I'd wake up with nosebleeds, my sheets damp with sweat, flashes of those black eyes searing through my dreams. And then the visions started. Not dreams, visions. Clearer, sharper than reality itself. I'd be sitting at the table, staring at my coffee, and suddenly I was back in that endless white chamber, staring at dozens of figures watching me. Or I'd be on the bus, and the faces around me would melt into gray skin and black eyes, turning toward me all at once. People said I looked sick, pale, hollow-eyed. I stopped answering calls, stopped leaving the apartment. I thought maybe if I shut myself away, they'd forget me. But deep down I knew they weren't done with me. One night, about 3 months later, I woke to find my apartment bathed in blue light. My body was already floating above the bed, paralyzed. My chest burned where the symbols were, glowing brighter than ever. And then I saw it, through the window, hanging in the night sky like a shadow with teeth. The ship, waiting. I tried to scream, but my voice was gone, stolen from me by the same force that lifted me from my bed. My fingernails scraped the air uselessly, my body floating toward the ceiling as the blue light swallowed me whole. In a blink, the walls of my apartment dissolved, and I was back inside that same impossible chamber, glowing and endless. This time there was no one else, no Chris, no Emily, no Victor, just me and them. At least a dozen of the tall beings circled me, their eyes reflecting my terror. I wanted to fight, to curse, to beg, but my body was a puppet again, every movement stolen. One of them stepped closer and pressed its hand to my chest where the symbols burned. A wave of electricity ripped through me, every nerve firing at once, and I felt my consciousness crack open like an egg. Suddenly, I wasn't just seeing them. I was inside their thoughts, drowning in a flood of alien understanding. They had been here long before us, watching, cataloging, nudging our species forward like farmers tending cattle. They weren't invaders. They weren't saviors. They were observers, and we were their experiment. My mind filled with images of every abduction that had ever happened, every person who swore they'd been taken, every disappearance written off as a mystery. All of it was real. Thousands of us had been marked, studied, and released like tagged animals. Some never came back at all. I felt their fascination with us, the way we fought, the way we loved, the way we destroyed ourselves. We were both entertainment and puzzle to them. But underneath their curiosity, I sensed something darker, a purpose I couldn't fully grasp. "You will remain," a voice whispered inside my skull, not in words but in thought. "You will carry." I didn't understand at first, but then I saw it. Inside me, something had been placed there, not an object, but a seed. Pulsed faintly in rhythm with my heartbeat. My skin crawled as I realized I was no longer just me. I was carrying a piece of them, a fragment of whatever their plan was. Rage boiled up in me. I tried to fight, to tear free, to spit back into their endless black eyes. For a moment, I thought I broke through. I felt my hand twitch, my jaw clench, but then one of them raised its arm and the chamber dissolved around me. I fell, slammed back into my bed. My body convulsed, gasping for air like I'd been underwater for hours. The blue light was gone, but the humming still echoed inside my bones. Days passed. I stopped leaving the apartment. I stopped answering the door. My reflection in the mirror barely looked human anymore. Pale skin, hollow eyes, veins glowing faintly in the dark. The seed inside me was changing me. Slowly. I didn't tell anyone. Who would believe me? Chris, Emily, Victor, they were gone, erased, and I was left behind with the burden of proof stitched into my body. Sometimes at night, I hear them whisper in my head, not words exactly, but thoughts, instructions, observations. They're still watching through me, using me like a window. I don't know how much longer I can hold onto myself. I don't sleep. I barely eat. Every time I close my eyes, I see Earth from space, surrounded by their ships, waiting. Waiting for what, I don't know, but I feel it. Whatever they put inside me, it's counting down, growing. One night soon, when the humming reaches its peak, I think it will happen. Maybe I'll change completely. Maybe I'll vanish like the others. Or maybe they'll come for all of us. If you're listening to this, if you've watched until the end, remember my name. Daniel Cole, 27 years old, taken and returned, marked, because when they come again, and they will, you'll know this wasn't just a story on some forgotten channel. It was a warning,